At the end of the topic, you will be able to explain about imperialism in India and China, discuss the First and Second Opium War, describe the rebellion of Taiping and Boxer, analyze the end of imperialism. Imperialism in India. Imperialism in India started with a rivalry among native rulers rather than the motive of the British. In 1600, the English East India Company was formed in England, and later it set up a trading post at Surat with the permission of Jahangir, the Mughal emperor. In exchange for English naval protection to the Mughal Empire, which faced Portuguese invasion, the Mughals granted Britain the right to trade and establish factories. In 1664, Colbert, a minister of Louis XIV of France, founded the French East India Company and opened trading centers in India. This resulted in the rivalry between France and Britain. It led to the Carnatic Wars, and as a result, French influence in India was uprooted. Imperialism in India. The Nawab of Bengal, Siraj-ud-Dowlah, was against the British efforts for duty-free trade in Bengal. In 1757, this resulted in the Battle of Plassey, led by Robert Clive. In Bengal, Bihar and Orissa and 24 Parganas near present Calcutta, the East India Company was granted undisputed right to trade free of tax. In 1764, after the success in the Battle of Buxar, the company acquired the civil rights for the administration of Bengal from the Mughal Emperor Shah Alam II. In India, it marked the beginning of the company's formal rule. Lord Wellesley, with his subsidiary alliance, annexed a number of states. Lord Dalhousie, with his doctrine of lapse, occupied many more states. In 1857, the Great Indian Revolt against the English East India Company's rule broke out, and later it was crushed. In 1858, through Queen Victoria's proclamation, the British Crown took over the administration of India. Till its independence in 1947, India was under the rule of the British government. Imperialism in China. Imperialism in China is interesting to study. The Chinese considered themselves as superior and the only truly civilized country in the world. The other Asian traders adopted Chinese culture, but the European traders refrained from doing this. The Chinese emperor restricted the trade with foreign powers to the cities of Canton and Macau from 1757. This was done so that all traders would be under the administration of government officials. The British imported Indian goods in exchange for British goods and did not pay in gold. The Chinese sold tea and coffee to the British but always demanded payment in gold. The British were uncomfortable as a huge amount of gold was getting accumulated in China. The British found other means to trade with China. First Opium War. In India, the British started to grow opium, and this was sold in China. They sold opium in exchange for Chinese goods and gold. The Chinese were of the opinion that their peace was disturbed by the Europeans. European traders were not in favor of paying high custom duties and the control exerted on the growing import trade in opium. The imperial government in China prohibited the import in 1800, yet opium trade continued to boom. In 1839, the British resorted to war as it had a major share in opium trade. The war was known as the First Opium War. In 1842, the Treaty of Nanking was signed after the Chinese were defeated. According to the treaty, the Chinese had to give the island of Hong Kong to England. The British traders were allowed to trade from 5 ports. In criminal cases, extraterritorial jurisdiction was given to the English. Taiping Rebellion. The French, Americans and other foreign countries signed similar treaties with China. In 1854, the Chinese rebelled against the native Manchu kings and the foreigners. The rebellion was known as Taiping Rebellion, and the rebellion was suppressed. Second Opium War. More ports were demanded for trade by the foreigners, which were rejected by the Chinese government. In 1857, the British and French captured Canton, and this was known as the Second Opium War. In 1869, the Chinese were conquered and signed a treaty at Peking. The port of Kowloon was given to Britain, and more ports were opened for trade. Boxer Rebellion. In China, there was peace after the Second Opium War. In 1894, in the First Sino-Japanese War, China was defeated by Japan and the island of Formosa was given to Japan. The Chinese were angry with the Manchu ruler, Empress Dowager. Empress Dowager, known as Old Buddha, diverted the public anger that was against her on the foreigners. As a result, the Boxer Rebellion broke out when the Chinese youths turned their anger towards the foreign powers. In 1899, the British, French, German, Japanese and US settlements and all the Christians were attacked by the Boxers. End of imperialism. The Boxers were conquered by the joint army of the foreign powers and they marched to Peking, the capital of China. Empress Dowager fled the capital. The open door policy or Me Too policy was created by the United States of America and England. China was partitioned among the foreign powers for trade rights and China became an international colony. The lesson learnt in the Boxer Rebellion paved the way for the revolution of 1911. It brought an end to imperialism and the Republic of China was established under Dr. Sun Yat-sen. In this topic, you have learnt imperialism in India was started due to rivalry among the native rulers rather than the motive of the British. The Chinese considered themselves as superior and the only truly civilized country in the world. In 1839, the First Opium War was fought by the British against the Chinese. The Treaty of Nanking was signed in 1842. In 1854, the Chinese rebelled against the native Manchu kings and the foreigners which led to the Taiping Rebellion. Second Opium War was fought against China by Britain and France. Boxer Rebellion broke out when Empress Dowager made the Chinese youths turn their anger towards the foreign powers. The United States of America and the England formed the open door policy and the Chinese territories were divided among the foreign powers for trade.